All right, folks. Well, it was bound to happen. It was bound to happen that I was going to sit down and do this. And then the technical wizards were going to screw it up. So this is actually not the true transmission. And I'm so sorry. This is like the second go at it because my whole computer system just like, I don't know what happened. It just vanished. So we're going to try this again. Welcome into the transmission series. It is day 13. And actually, this is a perfect way to start today because I'm a little shaken. I'm a little bit frustrated with the system right now. And what I want to talk about is this exact response that I'm having right now, where I'm actually trying to explain to you why I'm late with something that I'm actually not at all late with, for a reason that had I not told you happened, you wouldn't have known anything about. This is only impacting me, not you. And so what I want to talk about today, sales, specifically sales, and this concept of the close, which is really scary. You think about all the movies in Hollywood that are like about the close, and you bring in the guy for the big close, right? Or you close the case, or you close the book, or you closing is very final. And I actually want you to invite you into something that changes the vibe of that a little bit. Closing a sale is simply an evolution of the relationship, where it starts as one thing, where they are a prospect, or some organizations call them suspect, prospect. And then you close the sale and they become a client, or whatever word you want to use, a customer. The relationship changes at that threshold. And so this is such a cool thing because we've been talking about thresholds. We've been talking about frequency. We talked yesterday about the throat chakra. And so today I want to talk about the close. I'm going to talk about the close and why you might be fumbling the close even when you know your stuff, because you are good at what you do. I don't need to tell you that. You don't need to tell me that. I know that about me. You're super knowledgeable. You're experienced. You have prepared for these sales calls. You know your offer or whatever it is that you do. You know it. You know it. You know it's possible. You know it's not. You know what you're selling. You know the boundaries. You have rationalized it all. But then here's what happens. And you can raise your hand if you're driving, or like do the raise the roof signal if you're a millennial and you're like super nerdy like I am. You get on a sales call and you freeze. And here's what I want to talk about today is this concept of freezing, because freezing doesn't always look like being frozen in place. It can look like talking too much, just like I did off the top of this episode where I was like, this big technical thing and I'm so sorry I'm late with this episode and blah, blah, blah. Like, you didn't care. I felt the need to over-explain. Talked too much about that. It also can often look like things, you've heard the phrase, read the room. When you're in a freeze response, you actually can't. So when you cannot read the room, you can't find yourself in time and space. You can't locate yourself, and you're also not as able to receive signals from other people that may be useful to you to respond to. This is especially key in sales. Here's what's happening. You're not bad at sales. Your nervous system has taken over and hijacked the situation. And when your nervous system is the only thing running the show, it is your executive function. It becomes how you think, and it will mitigate your ability to think clearly, to communicate clearly, to respond accordingly and strategically. So when it's offline or misaligned, you will have what manifests as a fumble at the close. And I want to invite you to really see this as not necessarily the close of a sale with revenue. You might be leading a team at work and really be struggling to communicate something to them that you need your team to be on board with. That can also be a sense of closing, right? You're going to close the alignment. You're closing the loop. So I'm going to talk about this in the context of sales and revenue, but know that this isn't the only context for this conversation. What I want you to hear more than anything else is that this isn't an issue of confidence. You're going to see a lot of coaches out there who are going to say, here's how to be more confident. Just act as if you are this other thing. I talked earlier in the series about cosplay financially. Like just act as if you're the person who owns the yacht. It doesn't work. And this is why. Because that belief exists at the level of your nervous system. Your ability to hold that vision and be that version of yourself is only limited by your nervous system's ability to release its protective mechanism that you have taught it to be so good at. So, you fumbling the sale is actually really happening at the level of your nervous system and nowhere else. So let's talk about this freeze response. And I'm going to tell it to you through the context of a situation that I experienced myself in sales. And so I'll give you some of the context if you are just new here. Welcome. This is the transmission series on the Narrative Advantage podcast. My name is Erin Trafford, and I have been doing this now. I believe we're on day 13. I have committed to transmitting my core intuitive thoughts to you via this podcast and the YouTube channel every single day for the month of October in 2025. And this has been grueling. I'm barely a third of the way through, and this is a lot for me, just FYI. My background is that I have been in media my entire life. I have done every single role under the sun in mainstream media as well as digital media. I've also, when I left the newsroom, I formed a digital media company, dealt a lot in sponsorships, in branded content, in SEO, affiliate marketing, all those things. I grew a platform to well over multi-six figures in revenue. And at the time, that was huge for what was effectively a blog platform. And I was able to generate hundreds of thousands of page views per month, which at the time was very successful for a niche blog. In 2021, I packaged that company up and I sold it for more than six figures, which, given it was a hobby housewife blog, pretty impressive. And I learned so much through that process that I now blend with my mainstream media knowledge, my educational background, and my work in strategic communications to work with my clients as a strategic communications consultant is mainly what I do. The other cool thing that I do, which is the story I want to tell you, is that in all of this, I have been able to stand up a branded production company. It's called Story Studio Network. You'll hear me refer to it on the podcast, SSN, Story Studio Network. And we do branded podcasts for large organizations that need to use narrative strategy and communication to unpack really complex issues in the market. So it's a really fun way for me to show up in my wholeness and bring all of myself into what I do. And so this podcast really is kind of an amalgam of all of that. So take what works for you, leave what doesn't. You might get nuggets from, me talking about strategic communications, even if you're a solopreneur, you market on Instagram, but I'm talking about LinkedIn. There's going to be all kinds of stuff that you're going to be able to take from what it is that I offer, especially through this transmission series, because I'm just downloading all kinds of juicy goodness every single day. So I want to talk about specifically a sale that I was working on last year with Story Studio Network. And the context is this. That is a big machine that I built. It is a production company at the highest level. And we work in audio first. And even so, no team is smaller than 5 people per project. So it's a big undertaking to work with Story Studio Network, which is why we work with very large brands and organizations who have big budgets. The budgets start at multi-5 figures, and many of them go above 6 figures over the course of, a season or 2. So these are big, heavy lift sales. And I don't want you to fall into this category of thinking that a $2,000 sale is the same energy as a $120,000 sale, because I will tell you with absolute certainty that it is not at all the same. If you are training yourself to make $2,000 sales, you will need to retrain your nervous system to make $120,000 sales. Just point blank. That's just a little nugget for you if you're thinking this way. But what is the same is that focus on the nervous system. So let's go back to this story. Last year, when I was in nervous system collapse, okay, like abject collapse. We talked about my closed throat. I had extreme digestive challenges. I was shortness of breath. Like I had every single symptom under the sun that made me think that I was going to die in my 40s. Okay. Like it was bad. It was really bad. I was like, we better get life insurance now just in case. Like I said that to my husband, like that's craziness. Okay. So here I am on this sales call for Story Studio Network. So this is a big project. Okay. It was great money. It was going to be great margins. It was great margins. Spoiler, we got the sale, but here's the story. It was exactly the kind of work we wanted to do. And I went into that prepared. I had notes. I knew the pricing. I knew the structure. I knew all of those things. I knew what questions I wanted to ask and that I needed to have answers to in order to feel confident moving forward with the sale. And it was me, and I think it was like 4, maybe 5 other people from the client side on the call. So I was the only representative from the company. For whatever reason, usually I bring a second in order to defray the energy. That's just a tip if you're doing big sales like that, is to always have a second. But for this case, I didn't. It was just me. And if I'm looking back and dissecting this, about 10 minutes, whatever, into the call, I could really feel it. In fact, if I'm being honest, I could probably feel it like right at the beginnings, at the pleasantries level of the call. And it was this sensation now that I'm only able to identify now in hindsight as this sense of like disappearing. Like I was watching myself from outside and I was like, I'm on a sales call right now and I am going to be locking in a $150,000 sale and it's going to be a multi-year contract and and I could see and feel my throat getting tight. I could feel my executive process literally slowing down. And I could also hear myself answering their questions in a really unclear way. Like I would say something and then my mind would go to like, that was garbage. That was absolute garbage. That isn't representative of the level of work that you do. So I could hear that I wasn't in full control of what was coming out of my mouth. And what ended up happening, long story short, is I ended up agreeing to things that I wouldn't normally agree to, like timelines. Timelines at SSN are a big thing, and we're really clear about those now up front, especially at the level of the sale, because there's a lot of nuance that goes into confirming and contracting timelines when you're on a complex production. I also didn't push back on a few of their budget constraints with respect to scope increase. So I agreed to some scope increase without actually getting the extra budget, which is just a rookie freaking mistake. Brutal mistake that I made. And I didn't ask a few clarifying questions that I probably should have. And when I got off the call, I was like, well, we got the sale, but man, that felt like crap. That didn't feel good. What just happened? And here's what happened. It was freeze. So you know about fight. You know about flight. You may know about fawn, which is where you're constantly trying to make the other person more comfortable than you are. But this freeze response is what happens when your nervous system is perceiving a threat. And for whatever reason, it determines that fighting is not going to work and fleeing is not possible. So instead, you just disappear. You dissociate. You go into shutdown mode. And that's what I did. And the weird thing about freezing is that it should probably just be called disappearing. But the weird thing about freezing is that you're actually still functioning. You're still talking. You're not belligerent. You're not gone. You're not completely you're not just walking out the door. You're functioning, but you're not present. Your executive function is offline. The part of your brain that does the strategic thinking and responding and reading of the room and the social cues and making really good decisions It's not available to you. And there's a whole physical reason for this, because this all is controlled by something called the vagus nerve, which is the largest nerve in your body. It runs from your brainstem all the way down through your abdomen, like right through the center of your body. And there's a theory called polyvagal theory, where there are two distinct sections of this nerve. I'm very much oversimplifying right now. One section helps you feel safe and connected and responsive. And the other one is the part that shuts you down when you feel threatened, like if you were being chased by a tiger, right? So when you are in that freeze mode, it's because the part of you that feels threatened has taken over, and it has shut off access to the other parts of that system that allow you to work with your executive function. You quite literally cannot think clearly. And you certainly, therefore, cannot sell effectively. Your nervous system is not able to distinguish between actual danger and perceived danger. So you're not being chased by the tiger or the bear or whatever, like stampeding elephants, but your nervous system is actually in that moment of the sale registering all these other social things as threats. So they're going to judge me. What if they reject me? What if I don't make the sale and I was counting on the sale? How are they going to evaluate me? Are they judging me as a person? And then this whole concept of like having to perform like a circus monkey, that creates a sense of danger. That we actually live under that threat, quote unquote, like all the time. So I would hazard to say that the majority of modern nervous systems are in this, at least partially in a state of freeze all the time. Because if you lump in any history of like childhood stuff, financial trauma, a business trauma, rejections, whatever it might be, and we all have them, we all have some form of large T, small t trauma, your nervous system has actually learned danger and to protect you from it by shutting you down. So it looks like people saying, oh, you don't have the budget? No problem, I'll make it work. Timeline unrealistic? No big deal, we will make that work for you. I want to add all of these other things. Can you do this, even though you don't want to do any of that? And you're like, sure, no problem. We'll figure it out, even though it's scope creep and you know it, right? You get off that call and you may have had success on paper, but you are absolutely infuriated. And on top of it, you may be so disconnected that you can't even identify that you're infuriated. So then that just compounds the problem because you're not even able to identify the emotion that you're experiencing. Because consciously, you know better. You know you had boundaries. You wanted to have boundaries. You know rationally your worth, and yet it's not materializing the way that you wanted it to. It's because your nervous system was running the show. And it doesn't give a flying hoot about your business strategy. The only thing it cares about is keeping you protected enough that you survive being attacked by a tiger, among other things. So what does this cost you? It costs you what we talked about in the beginning, you fumbling the sales and or taking on clients that you really shouldn't take on because you're pandering, undercharging because you are not able to communicate effectively your actual pricing. Scope creep, that's the other side of undercharging, doing too much for too little, right? Even before the project starts. And then the social cues, your inability to read the room, means that you may miss red flags on a sales call. Man, I've gotten so good at seeing the red flags with clients who come to me. I have been able to shut down sales before they even get to a sales call now. If somebody comes to me and they say a few key phrases, especially on the Story Studio side, if somebody says to me, well, I just want to be a brand influencer, I'm like, cool, go away. We're not for you. Here's a podcast production agency that can pump out content for you. Go see them. They do good work in that area, but that's not for us. We do narrative, documentary style, deep branded content, like having a newsroom reporter working for your brand. That's what we do. We don't do brand influencer stuff. I understand it. Don't do it. And if I had taken on those clients, if I had been so dysregulated and they're like, we'll pay you. Cool. I want the money. I need survival. I worry I'm not going to be able to feed my family. My nervous system goes on, and I take that sale because I missed the red flags. And they're expecting me to make them an influencer, and that's really not what we do. What ends up happening is 6 months, 8 months, whatever into the contract, I am resentful of that client because, to what we talked about yesterday in the throat chakra episode, they have bought into a performance that is not in alignment with my truth. So now I bear the burden of the resentment, and they bear the burden of having aligned with a service provider and a partner that isn't what they wanted either. That's problematic on both sides. That's out of integrity on both sides. So you see where this becomes such a problem. So first and foremost, before you do sales calls, just make sure you resource yourself. Do some grounding exercises. And this is what I really get into in Story and Somatics, by the way, which I've linked in the description box below. It is a mini program. It's all audio. You'll be used to hearing my voice by then. It walks you through all of these manifestations at the various levels and gives you some tools to ground yourself, right? And then the one thing in terms of the devotional that I want you to practice with this is that asking yourself, where am I being overridden right now? Where am I perceiving a threat that is absolutely not a threat? And even just cultivating that tiny bit of awareness is what's going to help you move through any blocks that you have with respect to fumbling the close on the sale. I'm so glad I got through this on the second try. Thank you guys so much for sticking with me on this. Transmission series is so fun. It's also giving birth to a whole new content series that I want to launch in the next couple of weeks. So I will let you in on that. It's going to be much more focused on communications and implementation in your company. So I'm really excited about that. Make sure you're subscribing. Drop any comments you have in the comment box below. Tag me on Instagram, drop me a DM on Instagram. As always, there's also links in wherever you're listening or watching this. The links to all of the programs and all of the different ways to work with me are there right now. And I'm still running the lab experiment, the embodiment lab. I am hoping to bring in 10 or 12 folks into that program for the end of November. I want to kick it off November 24th. So hoping to have the folks all locked in by mid-November so I can tailor the program to the folks in the room. Really low cost, and it's going to be a lot of this embodiment work blended with business strategy and showing up visibility strategy. So if that sounds enticing to you, you do need to email me, team@erintrafford.com, or DM me on Instagram, and I'll get you the application form for that. I'm not putting it up on the website yet until I know that it's going to work. I'm just not going to do that. This is a full experiment. So I will send you a link to the document if you are interested in that. And this is before mid-November 2025. All right. Thanks so much for listening. I will be back tomorrow.